Hello everybody and welcome. Hi, it's Cecilia. So here I am in London, it's 8 o'clock. Where are you all at the moment? Cheers. Where have we got everyone calling from? So Sybille would be joining us very shortly. I'm just gonna add her, fingers crossed. Home in Rome. Hi Heather. Hi Paul. Oh, this is exciting.
Hi everyone. Sorry, I'm doing this.
Hey.
Hi.
It's Sybille. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Do you know what? I've been practicing pronouncing your surname all afternoon, and I thought maybe I should just let you do it.
It's impossible to pronounce.
No, don't say that. Is it Van Zuylen? Van Zuylen?
Actually, I'm living in the French part of Belgium, so I don't even pronounce it correctly because it's a Dutch name. So it's Van Zuylen in French, and in Dutch I think it sounds a bit like Van Zuylen or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. Number of websites were very different, so I just thought I'm just going to ask you. So we've got lots of people joining us, which is really exciting. We've got Heather's joined us from Canada, Paul, Antonio here in London as well. Obviously, Cecilia's in Rome, so she'll be my little counterpart, but not by face. So we're welcoming everyone to make comments as we go. Any questions? I'm really excited to have this chat with you. So thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for inviting me.
No, it's a pleasure. I just thought I'd give a very quick sort of summary of what we're hoping to discuss tonight. We'll see how we go. Basically, just a little introduction to you, to Penna Volans and what it is and what it means to you, what you think it means to the calligraphy community and how they can get the most out of that. Having seen the catalogues, obviously I know how much work goes into it. I would love to delve a little bit more into what you've had to do to create these, these wonderful exemplars. And importantly, because what we'd like to do tonight is the both of us to set a challenge for calligraphers everywhere to choose a variation and do their best. So, yeah, I think it'd be great if you could sort of talk about your process and how you look at exemplars, where you find them, and the best way that we can use your catalogue for our practice and our study. So let's start with you, if we can kind of go back. Yeah, who you are, where you are, what you do, and what this is all about.
Okay, so I'm not going to start from the beginning, but well, I live in Belgium, so for everyone who doesn't know that. I live in Belgium and I started calligraphy in 2014, just a few months after the birth of my youngest son. So I had a lot of time on my hands back then because he was sleeping a lot.
Lucky.
Yeah. So I started back then and I spent a lot of time doing calligraphy, and I quickly got bored with the exemplars that I could find back then. So I started, like I think everyone back then, with Eleanor Winter's book.
Yeah.
And she has in her book a few nice examples of capital variations, but it wasn't enough for me. After a few months, I was really bored. I was a newbie, so I didn't really know what was looking good or bad. So
yeah.
Looking back at what I was doing back then, I should have been studying a bit more. Instead of wanting to try new things. But well, I was impatient. So I started learning Spencerian. And I took a course with Harvest Crittenden, and it was a wonderful course. And then a few months later, she offered another course in advanced Spencerian, where we studied a lot of different variations of capitals. And that was really eye-opening for me, because she showed us really how to look at an exemplar, how to study it, and how to build it again for our own style, so we can put it in our own projects.
Yeah. And I think the fascinating thing about what you've said in your catalogues is that you know, every penman had their own style, but it's, you know, it's really important to understand how they're constructed to then build that into your style and to choose what works best for you. We all have our favorite ways of doing an M or doing an A, but to understand what is possible and then taking it from there.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's really important to know that you don't need to invent something from scratch. You don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you want to do something original. You can draw inspiration from lots of different sources, and this is what I learned by studying all these different examples of variations. And so when I'm building a catalog, I'm looking at almost 200 different books by various authors. So there's a lot of inspiration in there, and you don't have to just copy one letter or the other. You can take different bits and pieces of every different letter.
And you have that bibliography, don't you, on your website? And I think you might have mentioned somewhere that it was about 300 resources that you have listed on your website, which is, you know, it's just an amazing foundation. And you know, one of the main ones being one that's quite accessible to everyone. So it's not that you have to be traipsing around to libraries. You can actually access these variations.
This is something that's great about the internet right now, and libraries are more often now digitizing all the collections of rare books, and it happens that copybooks are considered rare and fragile most of the time in these libraries. So it's part of the process now to digitize all these books so they can be protected from the hands of people who want to see them. And that's a really good thing, because they are very fragile.
And just for anyone who's joining who doesn't know what we're talking about, this is that you know, they can go to the website pennavolans.com. PENNA VOLANS. My daughter's learning phonics at the moment, so I'm spelling everything. So so visit Penna Volans. You'll see what we're talking about, and not only are there the catalogues there, obviously the bibliography, all of the resources that you've sourced this information from, but also some really interesting articles that you've written, you know, on the history of various things. So it's a really insightful place to go and visit if people haven't already done that.
Yeah, thank you. It's a lot of work, and I would like to write more posts in the website, but right now I don't really have the time, and it's a lot of research. So
yeah, absolutely.
I'm trying my best to do that.
Yeah, no, I think what you've got is, you know, it's a really good starting point for anyone. So, you know, I think that's really powerful. So, yeah, I mean, I guess probably the next thing I guess we'll talk about the project and where it's at. So Penna Volans is a series of catalogues that you're creating for each letter of the alphabet. And for each of those letters, there's over 100 variations that you provide, which is, you know, is amazing. So just let people know where the project's at the moment, what letter you're up to, that sort of thing.
Okay, so I've done all the capital from A to K now. I'm working on L. And I also did 2 catalogues of flourishes. So there's the descenders and ascenders. That I separated both these flourishing styles because for me it's something that can be well, you know, you see an ascender flourish on an L, you can use it for an H or whatever letter with an ascender. So it's interesting to have everything in the same place.
Definitely. And I like what you've done. I mean, it's so methodical that you've got for every catalogue you have an index. So when somebody purchases a catalogue, they get the index, which gives them, you know, in a lot more concise way, they can see every variation. And then you give also the catalogue of every variation at, you know, 10 by 15 size, so that people can really focus in on their study. So it's such a comprehensive resource to download, and they're all available. A through K, as well as the flourished ascenders and descenders, are all available on your website now. So people should go and have a look at that as well. But you've also got there's a sample one that people can download as well, isn't there?
Yeah.
So that just see what it's all about. And that will come in handy, obviously, for the challenge if people want to sort of get involved. You know, they can go that way. But we'll talk more on the challenge a little bit later. Now, Cecilia, if you're there and I'm missing anything, please do feel free, but I'll continue for now to just let me know. Yeah, so I think we talked about having a look at a specific variation that you could show and talk about how you would break that down, you know, the best ways of methodically moving through recreating a variation or creating it in your own way. And yeah, we'd love to talk a bit more about that.
Okay, so I'm going to show you. I'm going to turn the camera so you can see what I'm showing. Okay, I'm doing this on the iPad. So this is the letter I wanted to show you that I chose for the challenge for myself. So I'm going to show you what I'm doing. So this is the exemplar that the letter was taken from. It's a book that was written by a French engraver at the end of his career. This engraver, Jules Giraud, was very skilled at his craft, and he loved to do very ornamental things. And I really like his style. It's obviously an English roundhand, but in the 19th century style. So it's very different from what you can see in the universal penman, for example. Mm. It's airier and lighter, and also very ornamental, because the universal penman there are a lot of flourishes in there, but the lettering itself is not so much flourished, so flourished. This kind of example can be very overwhelming when you're looking at it and you want to just work on the capital or a whole word. So you need to break it down into smaller parts so you can really make it your own and understand everything that's going on in there.
So I was daunted when I saw that whole word together. So just to confirm, this author was an engraver. This is what Steely was just wondering. He wasn't a calligrapher?
Well, he was an engraver who specialized in calligraphy, and he was also a calligrapher, but his craft was really engraving. I am really, we don't know a lot about this guy, but I'm guessing that this book was not meant for calligraphers. It wasn't meant for to teach people how to write. It was more about showing his own skill, what he was able to do, and providing examples of what was possible in ornamental styles for other engravers at the time. So this is not per se a copybook.
Just so you know, Paul, Paul just mentioned that many engravers, or some engravers, were also master writers. That they, they writing masters. Sorry,
I'm quite sure that this guy was, because his writing was really flawless, and so I'm not. I cannot bet on that, but it's probably the case.
Yeah.
Okay, so. As I said, to understand what is going on in there, what I like to do is break down, look at just some parts of it. And that is one of the reasons why I wanted to do the catalogues. Because when you see a letter in its environment, you don't really understand what's going on in there. But when you see the letter on itself, it makes it easier for you to get inspired by it. Well, for me actually, to get inspired by it and to project it on my own work, on my own style. Because that's something I didn't really say, but when I started and I bought the Universal Penman quite early on, and I was, I thought it was a beautiful book. There's a lot of beautiful things in there, but I couldn't see myself writing this kind of calligraphy, this kind of style that was in there. But I knew that the copperplate calligraphy that I was doing was really similar to what was in there. So it's hard to explain this. but well, it's a beautiful book. There's a lot in there, but I wasn't able to use that. So that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
So this is the example.
We are sideways, so I don't know.
Okay.
It's not a problem for me, but if you were to rotate it other way,
Okay.
just 90 degrees the other way. Yep, if possible.
Okay.
And
like this.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. Okay. Sorry. So okay, like this. So this is the letter that I want to study, and I want to use in a new design. Let's say I want to. So obviously, I'm going to have to write a word after this letter. So I need to be careful about this big part here. If I want to use this, and there's an ascender that's coming, let's say I'm writing beautiful, the T is going to be somewhere here, so I would need to adjust this part. So that's one thing I'm going to be careful about when I'm using it. Another thing that's kind of interesting to notice is that here the capital is bigger in the proportion than what's illustrated here. You see, so this, I always put the capital on a grid that is the kind of grid that we use as calligraphers all the time. So you have the X height, that is, and you have twice the X heights for ascenders. I'm trying to not forget what I'm saying. And so here the small letters would come at this height, like 2/3 here. So you would need to adjust it, or well, you could make it bigger on your grid line. This is something that you need to
fit within
figure out.
The standard ratio that we work with, but it would.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm doing this. So the first thing that I'm going to be looking at is where everything is falling on the grid. So I'm always using the grid as a guide to tell me where I need to start the stroke and where I need to end it, and where every oval that I'm going to make is going to go. So let's, not everything is there. No. So here the grid is in red, so you see it better. The first thing I'm noticing is that this loop here ends roughly at the same height as this loop here. And so they're both in the middle of the letter, of the stem. So that's something I'm noticing. And I notice where this stroke starts, it goes to the X height here. And here I'm noticing these things. So I'm keeping all that in mind while I'm working. It's not something I'm always looking at, but that's something I like to look at before I start writing the letter itself. And when I'm studying a letter, I'm always working pencil because it gives me more freedom to really explore everything and to learn the movement. So I'm always about, learning how the movement is done, and I need some freedom for that. So this is why I work in pencil. So the first thing I'm going to look at is the curve of universal beauty, or the stem. And I need to understand that this is an oval that is horizontal. And this here balances this part. So if I make this part smaller, I would probably need to adjust something in this part, or balance it out with lowercase letter. Like I said, if I wanted to write beautiful, the T would be coming here, and it would be okay to make this smaller. while I was practicing, learning to make this letter, one of the things I always got wrong in the first few attempts was the distance here between the stem and this oval here. So that's something that I'm going to be careful about when I'm going to do it. And tell me if there's something that you don't understand when I'm explaining.
Just checking everyone's comments. I think if you could just move the iPad slightly up a little, because I think some comments are covering up what you're talking about.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's not your fault. That's perfectly fine. Thank you.
So the B especially, but all capital letters are built around ovals. So that's important. It's really important to be aware that you need to be able to make ovals before you make these letters in a satisfactory way. So this is a succession of oval all the time. And this part here, you see this little loop is cutting this smaller oval in two, right in the middle. That's something that you need to be aware of as well. This part here, that's yes, this part here is almost as wide or as wide as this part here. It's going to be important as well. And if you draw lines, yeah, I'm sorry, like this, you see that there's always the same space everywhere. And if you draw lines like these, you end up with squares. So you see that the space is really almost equal here in the middle. Every time you have a white space, it's almost equal. That's something you need to keep in mind when you're doing it. It's going to be helpful when you're actually writing it, because it will help you to see where you need to change things.
Yeah, if something's too wide or a bit out of kilter, you can really resolve that quite easily with the grid.
Yeah, exactly. You can also draw the oval if that helps. I know some people really find that helpful. For me, it's a bit too much information. But you see one oval here, one oval here. There are obviously smaller ovals in there, one big here. The curve of universal beauty is obviously also a succession of ovals, oval shapes that you need to follow. And also, I'm sorry, there's one thing I wanted to say before I was getting to this, is that before you actually go into this difficult letter, this very ornate letter, you need to understand what's going on in the simple shape. So the skeleton of the letter, which is this, if you can do this B, which is kind of a really basic B, which was taken from the Universal Penman as well. This is the kind of B that you learn when you're first learning calligraphy. If you know how to do this, then you should be able to do this part here. It's something that you need to understand. Don't do the very ornate letter forms before you can master the simple ones, because you're going to be frustrated with them. But you can try if you want, anyway.
Okay.
So the second part of the letter, I'm lost here. The second part of the letter is this part. So you see, it's also a succession of ovals, but this is why I love the B so much, because you really do one oval, an oval, and so on, and you don't really know when to stop. That's what I like about this. So if I do this letter, first I'm going to, sorry, I'm getting confused, sorry.
That's okay.
I'm going to start here. I would really start just doing this part first, and not be careful about this one at first because it's going to be confusing for me. So I start with the smaller part. And again, this is, well, all of it is an oval. So you're always really doing this movement. If there's something that you really want to, if you really want to improve your calligraphy, just do ovals. It's the greatest thing that you can do. So you need to know that well, you start in a smaller scale. Then, as I said earlier, there's this line here, which is cutting the letter in two. This oval and this one are really in the middle of the letter. And then this oval here, well, I'm sorry, this one, this small loop, is oriented that way. That's something I'm always forgetting and doing bad, because my middle loop here is never in the right direction. Then this loop here is as big as the X height. And when you look at it with the stem, where is it?
I just
look at it with this.
Another comment about your warm-ups. Paul's just commented and said you really need to learn muscular movement in order to achieve the smooth ellipses. So
yeah,
all those warm-ups that we are all doing is really important.
Yeah, exactly. And doing all this movement all the time. I don't know if you're in the kitchen and doing a souffle, for example, or something. Just use those muscles.
Souffle in the kitchen.
So I'm sorry. Yes, this loop here is closer to the stem on the left than it is to this curve on the right. That's something I need to be careful about. And then just this is another oval going on here. So there's really a lot to be careful about when you're going to take your pencil or your pen and doing all of that. But you don't need to get everything right the first time. For me, I know that I always focus, like I said, on the stem first. I try to get everything right on the stem first, and I don't really care about getting this part right. The movement that I'll be doing with my pencil is just practice for when I'm going to take care about that part. And when I'm studying a letter, I can spend hours on one letter, but I don't want to frighten anyone. It can go faster. It's important to know how you're going to use the letter, how hard you want to be with yourself. With that, if you want to introduce to use that letter on something that is going to be written in your own hand, you're not a machine, so everything has to fit together. And obviously, if your style is not as perfect as the letter itself, it's going to be strange. Sorry. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying.
Yes, people might be coming at this from a more, the more modern calligraphy approach, which is, it's got a different structure. So yeah, I see what you're saying, that applying it to your own style, you need to kind of take it back first and
be kind with yourself and don't try to make movements that are so foreign to yourself, that are really, really different from what you are used to do. With time, you're going to be able to make things a little smoother and better. Well, I'm really bad at explaining all this. Sorry.
Does anyone have any questions at this point, just while we're having a little chat, if anyone wants to ask anything? I was just thinking, I was watching Francesco the other night, and he was using tracing paper to kind of make sure that when he could then put the copy over the top and see that it matched up. So he'd do the test and then put the copy over the top and kind of verify that he was getting that muscle memory, which I thought was really a really nice way to go about doing it and kind of cross-checking and referencing. Do you do anything like that where you're kind of validating what you're putting down in that sense, like formally, or is it more that the visual representation is enough for you to kind of say, yeah, that looks right?
I'm trying to find the paper so I can show you. This is one of the this is one of my attempts with this. So I first worked, well, it's one of the last pages, so it's kind of good. But so I first tried to get this right. But just on the fly, you know, I'm doing this. I'm using the grid to position everything in the right place, and then I'm estimating if this looks like the letter that I want to do. If you want to study a letter and get it absolutely right, then I would suggest maybe trace it the first times, just to get the movement, you know. So you have the movement in your hand. Don't worry about getting the pencil on the paper correctly, the ink on the paper. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. But in the end, you'll get there. So it takes a lot of tries. You see here, I cut this part, the bigger part here, because it was easier for me to estimate where I needed to start if there's an empty place here, empty space. This part is one of the most difficult for me in this letter, in this particular letter, because it's a big oval, and when I do big things, I tend to go too big.
So then trying to refine it back down as you're kind of creating the actual...
Yeah, exactly. And here I was playing with the letters that can go after it. And that's when I noticed that I had some problems.
Even the T, I guess, I can see it's influencing that as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I've just got 3 questions, but I'll let you finish what you were saying then.
Yeah, so. Maybe you still want us to look at this, or maybe you can see my face.
Well, in this, one of the questions is, what type of paper do you use to practice when you're using pen and ink?
Okay, so this is just printer paper. It's Clairefontaine smart print paper, if I remember correctly. Smart print paper, and it's like 60 grams paper. So it's kind of really lightweight. I can see the guidelines through it. That's something I like. I don't really like to write directly on the guidelines, because they're too present for me then.
And then I had someone say, I want to ask that adding to the circular hand movement practice, does infinity loop also help? And if it does, should I practice diagonally as well to help my stem lines?
Yeah, I would do that, obviously. Yes. When I'm doing the oval drills, I'm doing them the Spencerian like. I'm thinking it always on a slant. So I'm always doing these.
Yeah.
And if you do them, you can also add something like this inside.
Oh yeah, right.
And then you're practicing having the same white space here, and also if you can try to put it right in the middle. This is really helpful for flourished capitals.
Really nice.
Always try to cut your spaces in half.
Lovely. Okay. And then from Paul, when you look at the distribution of weight and where they sit on the lines, are you intending on sticking to the same deposition, or do you let the tool dictate that, or do you go back and add weight?
I always let the tool decide that. I know some people are really, how can I say, worried about getting the weight in the right place. I don't know if one of these has weight. You know, in the Universal Penman, in the 18th century copybooks, they often had weight on upstrokes, like they would have weight here, and that's something that you cannot achieve with the tools that we are using today. So I'm always using the tool that I have and try to be satisfied with what I get with my tool. And when I'm learning to, when I'm working on Italian capital, you know, the capitals that are with the shades in are on the upstrokes instead of the downstroke. I'm either doing those backwards, so I would be starting here to get the weight here, or I'm trying to have the same kind of movement but with the shades in the wrong place compared to the exemplar. That's something that I find really interesting, because that's how I discover new stuff also, you know, playing with the exemplars.
Question is, are you using oblique or straight holder?
I'm using an oblique. I know it's not very orthodox, but it's what I'm using.
I won't tell you who asked that question. And what is your go-to nib for your work?
I love the Départementale Sémentée, so that's the Blanzy 2552. You see what I mean? I'm going to show. No. I don't have a box here. It's a French nib. I really like it. It's kind of easy to find for me, and it's kind of, well, it's not the finest, but I like it.
Lovely. Okay, so that's all the questions for now.
Okay, so I wanted to illustrate with this that when you get the catalog, so this is the example of the index that you were talking about earlier, you get all these letters. Here in the B catalog, you have 127 letters.
And each meticulously numbered with where they're from, which is a wonderful thing to have.
This is something that was very important for me, to always document where it was coming from, because when you're working on a letter, you want also to be looking at it in its environment when it's possible, to understand how it behaves with other letters, with the lowercase and maybe other capital letters around it. So what was I saying? Yes. So in one catalog, you have a lot of different letters, but you don't have to absolutely be focusing on just copying one letter. You can just take bits and pieces of letters that you like. If I want to, let's say I like this part, I can use it in any letter that I want, in any other P that I want. If I like this part, I could make a hybrid letter, and this I would get something like this. So the catalogs are really about getting the inspiration to create something that is good for you, for your own style.
Yeah, and I think as you look through the catalogue, even because, you know, having looked through, I've got the A catalogue in front of me, there are ones that will jump out and appeal to you quite, you know, they're just where you want to start and then go from there. You don't have to love every variation. Find the one that speaks to you.
I have some letters in there that are really weird. Trying to find one, but I made a point to take everything that I could find, because I know that not everyone has the same taste as I do. But you know, letter like this, for example, I know that it's not coming from the round hand. It's something that was done in the round hand style, because you can see very thin downstroke and you have the swells like you have in the round hand, but it's coming from a style that is, I know Paul Antonio is going to correct me if I say something wrong. This is the English secretary, I think. So it's a style that came earlier, before the round hand, that was very popular in the century before the round hand came about. So what I put these ones in the catalog because I thought they're interesting. You can always get something from that. You can invent something new from these. Yeah. And actually, I used these for some things that I really liked after. I don't have the example here, but it's fun to try something new that you wouldn't have tried otherwise, you know.
Exactly. So I've just had a question from Falsity of Reality. To get accustomed to the flourishes, should we work with the flourishes on the whole letter, or practice flourishing on itself first, on its own first, and then head to the letters and practice with the letters? So I think that kind of comes down to what you were describing to us before with the bee you're working on.
Yeah, trying to find it again. Yeah, it's always good to practice. Well, I would say for lowercase letter, for the small letters, I always try to practice the flourish on itself, because I'm going to be able to use it on other letters afterwards. For capital letters, you often see the same flourishes that are coming out often. This thing, you can get it on an A or any letter with a capital stem like this. So it's always interesting to practice. I would practice the whole stem, not just the flourish, because you need to get everything falling properly together, you know. But it's, well, you need to have fun while you're practicing. You need to enjoy yourself. So I'd say there's no wrong or right way to do it, as long as you understand what you're doing and you are able to correct yourself, to see where things went wrong and where things went right, and to try and correct that.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm conscious that we're at 40 minutes and that we can't go over an hour. So I think if we could move back to the continued demonstration that you were doing, and then we can talk a little bit about the challenge as well in the next 20 minutes, I think. Just one last question. What size do you work in on the iPad? Do you digitize in Illustrator or similar software when you're done? Okay, so on the iPad, I like to work really big, generally be it on paper or on the iPad. What size I work on in the iPad, it really depends on what I'm doing. I don't have a fixed size. The iPad is the big one, if that's the question. This is the 12 point, I don't know. It's the big one. And it's really, I like to do big movements, so it was important for me to get to have that freedom to move. Yeah. Okay. Lovely. Okay. All right. Yeah, that's good. I think we've done those questions for now. Bye, Paul. Thanks for dropping in. Paul's off.
Bye. Thank you, Paul.
Okay, so yeah, we were in the midst of the bee, weren't we? We'd done the stem and the main section. Yeah. The further flourishing that we needed to look at on that one. Okay, so this little flourish here, these are the things that I always put in gray in the catalog, because it's not absolutely important that you do it, but I like to put it in there because it's in the original, you know, original design, and I think it balances, it helps to balance the whole letter, because otherwise it would be very top heavy. But if I'm writing a word with a descender, I would use the descender to take that space here. Yep. So you don't really have to do this this flourish, but it's just put it there so you know how you could maybe use that space. What's interesting about this flourish is, again, it's dissecting all this space in two, you know, almost two. So you again have equal spaces everywhere, and I guess it's important to educate your eye to see all these things, and really, when you're looking at the letter, understand how everything works together and why the letter looks balanced or looks good on the in the copybook, and maybe why it doesn't look good when you're trying to copy it. Lovely. Fab. Well, I think that that really showcases this new bee, which you're going to be updating for the catalogue, aren't you? To the one, because it's not in the catalogue at the moment.
Yeah, it's in it because I updated the catalogue yesterday.
So, which brings me to the challenge that we're setting for everyone at the moment. So, Sybille has kindly, given us this time to talk through an example and how she works with exemplars. And we wanted to take this opportunity, especially while a lot of people are at home, may have a bit more time to practice, that we thought, what a great way to use some time to challenge you all to extend your variations. So what we're hoping after this is that you will join us, either taking this example B, which I believe, Sybille, you're going to be offering.
So I'm going to be sharing. I already sent it to all the people who signed up for the newsletter. So you can get it there if you signed up. But I'm also going to share it on my Instagram. So everyone can see it.
Yeah, and so then obviously you could either choose a letter that you love, or one that you find challenging. I'm not a particular lover of K, but I think I'm going to give that a go because my name is Kate, so I should probably try and like it. Or there is the sample catalogue that you can download. So there's lots of options of, hundreds and hundreds of variations that you can choose from. So we would love for everyone to jump on board. We will share, and Sybille already has shared a hashtag. We'll be asking people to tag both, it's Pebble in the Sky.
Yeah.
Do you want people to tag Penna Volans?
You can, but I actually lost the password to that.
Okay, that's fine.
Account, so I don't really manage it again. Well, that's something I need to fix.
Cecilia's just reminded me to tell everyone to go to pennavolans.com to get the catalogues. And they're currently priced at €5.55 per catalogue, which for the amount of work, and we didn't even really get onto that topic of how much work you've put into this. I just have visions of you traipsing around to libraries everywhere and taking pictures, and it's just a very romantic notion of what you've done. So get to the website to get your catalogues and join us for the challenge. We will post some more on our stories about how to join the challenge, and I'm sure you will do the same. We would just really love to see everyone getting involved and just enjoying the love of a favorite letter, or doing what you want. So we wanted to say a big thank you to you for taking the time to talk to us and showing us, this element of the amazing work that you've done. Everyone, thank you so much on the chat. So thank you everyone for joining us. We'll keep this up for 24 hours, so people should be able to see this. Sign up to the newsletter, exactly, to Sybille's newsletter for any updates. Because when Sybille does, for example, with the B, she will add that to the catalogue and you'll get an update of that. So if you've purchased it, you'll get an update. Thank you, Cecilia. So I think that's all. If there's any other questions, let me know before we go. Anything from you, Sybille, that you wanted to say? I think I've told a fair bit of talking.
Not really, but if you were asking about my process, how I do get all these books.
Yes.
Well, I've been visiting libraries, obviously. I haven't been to London yet, but if you are interested in copybooks, you should go to the British Library, where they have beautiful collections, and the Victoria and Albert Museum.
Okay.
These are the main two libraries where you will find a lot of copybooks. All the copybooks are not as well done as the Universal Penman, obviously.
Yes.
But on the website, you said the bibliography has a lot. There's a lot in there.
Online.
And really, all the libraries worldwide are beginning to share that and put them online. So I'm always trying to add to the bibliography.
Yeah. And as I don't know if you can see, but Lily Lettering, for perhaps obvious reasons, has asked if you have an estimate of when the L catalogue will come out.
Well, I'm working on it. I don't know yet how many L's are going to be in there. I always find all the letters, then vectorize them. And it usually takes me like 40 hours for one catalog. So I'm doing the best I can to go as fast as possible. But it should be by the end of April.
End of April. Okay, that's lovely. And I can see people planning their trip to London. If anyone's coming this way, let me know. And I'll take you to the British Library, and we can go to Cornelison's while we're there. It's not far, but that's British Museum actually. But anyway.
Exactly.
All right, so is everyone ready for this challenge? I hope so. Do share the live so other people can see what we're up to. And yeah, I hope to talk a little bit more about that. You know, that's touching on your process there a little bit, but
yeah,
I appreciate you've had to fit a lot into this chat tonight. So
yeah, there's a lot to say.
And look, my glass of wine is calling.
Well, enjoy then.
Oh no, thank you. Thanks so much, Sybille. We'll see you again soon. And yeah, let's do it. Yeah, we'll be online doing these variations from now. Thanks, Cecilia.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sybille. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Ciao.